We have to keep this deal together. That sentence can sound like good service. Sometimes it is. Other times, it's exactly how an agent ends up pushing a client through a transaction that no longer makes sense. Our job is to solve problems. We should look for solutions. When an inspection uncovers an issue, when appraisal comes in low, financing issues happen, title work raises questions, or the buyer and seller just disagree. We should not give up on a transaction every time something becomes difficult. But keeping the deal alive cannot become the goal at all costs. The deal is not our client. The buyer or seller is. Sometimes an inspection uncovers a problem that can be repaired, credited, or worked through. Sometimes it uncovers something the buyer is not comfortable taking on. Sometimes an appraisal gap can be negotiated. Sometimes making the numbers work would require the buyer to use money they need for repairs, reserves, or moving expenses. Sometimes a delayed closing is manageable. Other times, the delay creates a real problem for the client. The answer is not automatically to walk away, but the answer also cannot automatically be to find a way to keep the deal together and closing on the calendar. We have to slow the situation down enough to understand what the problem actually means for the person we represent. What will the solution cost them? What risk will they be accepting? What happens if the issue becomes larger after closing? Are they still comfortable with the transaction? Or does this property or agreement still meet the goal they started with? Those questions matter more than whether everyone involved wants the transaction to survive. This gets uncomfortable because agents have something invested too. We have time invested, we have emotion invested, and we have spent weeks or months helping the client to get to this point. And yes, we have a commission connected to the closing. We need to be honest enough to make sure our desire to save the transaction is not affecting the advice we give. A good question to ask yourself is, am I trying to solve this because the solution is good for my client or because I do not want the deal to fall apart? Those are not always the same thing. A deal falling apart is disappointing. It is not automatically a failure. Sometimes the best work an agent does is helping a buyer avoid a property that no longer makes sense. Sometimes it is helping the seller recognize that the terms being demanded are not reasonable. Sometimes protecting a client means finding a creative solution. Sometimes protecting the client means helping them walk away. We should not make that decision for them. Our job is to gather the facts, explain the options, discuss the risk, and give an honest recommendation. Then the client gets to decide. That conversation should not sound like pressure. It should sound like, here's the issue, here are the realistic ways we could handle it, here is what each option may cost or require, here is the risk I believe you should consider, what are you most comfortable doing? That is advising. It is different from telling a client, we've come this far, we just need to find a way to make it work. How far someone has already come does not determine whether moving forward is still a good decision. During the next difficult transaction conversation, take a minute and separate the client's goal from the goal of closing the deal. Bring options instead of panic. Explain the trade-offs instead of minimizing the problems. Be willing to recommend the solution that best protects the client, even when it is not the solution that protects the transaction. We do not get paid to make every deal close. We get paid to help our clients make decisions. Sometimes that saves the deal. Sometimes it saves the client from a deal. That's all for this week. See you around.